Welcome back to the Coaching in Early Intervention Training and Mentorship Program podcast series. Today, we will use the voice of providers who have been through the CEITMP to answer the frequently asked question, how manageable is the CEITMP? We thought it was best to hear directly from providers. So I asked the question during ongoing discussions with providers and have clipped the discussions to provide a variety of responses and perspectives for you today. I want to thank each of the providers for taking the time to support this podcast series. Yeah. One final question. We hear often that providers, even before they get started in the program, really share concerns that they're not going to be able to do it. It's too long, it's too much work, and so how manageable was the program for you, and what strategies, if any? I think providers with really small caseloads feel like I don't want to spend a lot of time because I have small caseloads. How large is do you have a pretty big caseload or a medium size?
I do not. I only work part-time, and
Okay.
I've had about 24 to 30 kids on my caseload through the program.
Okay. So, and some with caseloads your size say, I have too many kids on my caseload that I can't commit the time to it. So how manageable was the program, and what strategies did you use to work yourself through the curriculum with your team?
I will say that I'm that person too. Time is very valuable to me. And when you get the schedule, it's a little bit overwhelming when you see it. And it does seem like you're in it a long time. Now, even before I go any farther, remember Lisa treated us like a human, and she understood. I remember at the end of our program, her husband actually got COVID and we had to switch a meeting and all the things. So life happens, and your coach understands that. But from the beginning, I had read some other people that had gone through the program. I had talked to them. I set out to an hour and a half a week. Now that included my meetings. So on the weeks that I had meetings, that was my hour and a half that week. So my reading was done every week. I set, whatever day I set aside, and that was my hour to hour and a half. I was going to set it. So I would read during that. And then when we moved into recording, I would move into, okay, I'm going to sit down this evening and I'm going to prepare my questions and I'm going to think through what I'm going to do. And then towards the end, it honestly became really easy once you got into that habit of recording yourself and then watching it, commenting on it. Well, then that was my hour and a half a week. I can honestly say that I never spent more than that. Now, if I didn't keep up with it, then yeah, you're going to have to spend more time. And we actually finished the program early because I was leaving the country, and my good friend that's a speech therapist is on a kidney transplant, or she's donating her kidney to her daddy. So we wanted to go as quick. So Lisa was very willing to work with us at our pace, and that's what we did. And so no, I did not feel stressed out. Yes, I was overwhelmed. When you first see that, anxiety comes from what we don't know, right? So when you don't know, it's all, but once I got going and saw, oh, and I wish I could say that to everyone. I hope everyone listens to this. If you spend 1 to 1.5 hours a week, you won't have any problem. You won't be stressed out. You'll have plenty of time to get your stuff done.
Sounds like structuring some time, keeping up with what the content of the week is. But then I also heard you say that there's also opportunities for flexibility when necessary, which is
absolutely,
which is great. How manageable was the program? Sounds like you've got some kids and you had a caseload of 30-ish. So how manageable was the program to complete, and do you have any strategies that you use that you found to be most effective in helping you move through the program?
Well, the program was definitely long. It was long, and there were times when it was more rigorous than others, depending on my learning curve and what it was I was working on. But having it longer, I think actually helped it or helped me anyway, because I had space and time to practice what it was that I was learning. And so, at the beginning, there's more learning and more discussion and more kind of on your own time. So it was a little bit slower of a start, and then you start recording and self-reflecting, and it's way more time consuming. But that time was already spent to get that foundation there. And so that's one thing that I think is a positive on how long it is, because that was my big thing, like, oh man, this is 7 months long. But, when you look back on what you did and how it was a little bit slower of a start, and it kind of, gets you more involved and more applicational through it, I think that was beneficial. And, since change takes time, if we would have pushed it together in half the time, I don't know if I would have soaked in as much to continue on after the coaching program was completed.
It sounds like you took the program structure to heart and focused on where you were in that period of time, and then practiced in sessions and really worked on that application, content application. Yeah.
And there's room for that, because of the way it's structured. You just focus on one thing this week or two, and then you build and build on that. So as far as, strategies to work through it, I think having a good perspective on it and a positive perspective on it, and then trying to find ways that this can be beneficial to you, to your families. And I found some of the strategies I was using in sessions, I was also using in my home with my children and my husband. So, or in conversations with other people, just the way listening more, asking open-ended questions, things like that. I think if you can focus on those positives, it definitely helps to work through that.
How manageable was participation in the program for you? And if you can share any specific strategies that really helped you kind of get through the program, that would also be helpful.
Yeah. Well, I dreaded when I knew it was coming to Barren River. I was like, oh no, I'm busy. I have a full caseload. I'm sure it's like this all around, but speech therapists are short. So people are calling, can you take another referral? And I thought, am I going to have to drop my caseload to work on, this coaching stuff? So there's going to be less kids getting services. And, I thought this is going to take a lot of time. So, I dreaded when it came to Barren River, I was like really concerned about it. But I will have to say it is very manageable. It's set up in a way where it's broken down. I probably spent an hour to an hour and a half a week on the things that I was working on. And Julie was very, very supportive, like the rubrics. Everything was pretty much laid out black and white, what we needed to do. And there was, just small steps in the recordings. So you felt like, you would do one thing, which would lead to the next. And it was all a very natural progression on things. And most of my families were very receptive to, I explained to them, I was part of this coaching cohort. Do you mind if we record our session? So, being real, some of those sessions I would not want to submit to my coach because crazy stuff happens and it's not the best day sometimes. So my strategy.
We're working with toddlers, right?
Yes, toddlers and their families and their siblings and their pets and their, neighbors that come barging in through the door. So it's like I would record a lot of stuff, and then I would think, okay, what's my best part of, reflection, whatever I was supposed to be focusing on. So it is very manageable. And I try to tell providers that I've talked to that are getting ready to start, it's overwhelming at first. It is. It's something new. It's, taking time. But I did see the benefits as I went through the program of how it was helping my families, how it was making me a better early intervention provider, and how, the kids were responding, how parents were actively getting down in the floor with me, and we were, doing those things together. I wasn't just hoping and praying when I left that they did it, So, you have those families that are hesitant to do the things that we are encouraging them to do, but most of the time they are very receptive to it when they see they're helping their child, and they see the benefits of what they're doing right there and then, and you're giving them that feedback and building them up. So it's very manageable. And Julie was great. I felt 100% supported the whole time. I did not feel like I was being judged on, oh, you did this wrong and this wrong, and like failure was not anything. It was all about completing the program and being supported. So, we're wanted to succeed in this, and we're just working together. So it was totally different than I thought it would be going into it.
That's great to hear. We on some of our infographics, we talk about the partnership that we as providers have with families to help the child learn and continue to develop. And it's nice to hear that it sounds like you and Julie had that partnership as well that was helping, helping your coaching growth as well. So that for me is really good to hear. How big's your caseload? Do you have a?
So I have right now with First Steps, I have 17 children, and then I see 16 privately.
Wow.
And these are some children that have, they've aged out of First Steps, and then I continued on with them. But yes, I see 17. They're all in person except for one, and I see them in person once a month. The rest is tele-intervention. So,
yeah. So you're busy. Sounds
busy,
like
busy. It's a blessing and a privilege.
Yeah. How manageable was the program? I think that probably is the number one fear of early intervention providers here in Kentucky when they're invited to participate, is I just don't have the time. There's no way. So can you talk a bit about that? Any strategies that may have helped you?
Sure. So it's very doable. It's very manageable. It's not hours and hours and hours of, personal time. Now, I would have to say that because I was cohort 11, of course, I had heard stories and there were, all these tales and things, but I just decided, you know what, I'm already believing, I'm using, I'm doing, let me just see for myself. Sorry. Excuse me. But it's very manageable. I felt like, if I just worked it into my schedule, like maybe a half an hour in the evening, a couple, maybe a couple evenings, a week. Also, I would carry the book in my car. If I had a cancellation, if I had any time, I would just, drive somewhere and have my half and half sweet tea and read the book. And I found that my coach to be very helpful. She was very open-minded. And like I said, I'd heard all these stories but the experience that I had wasn't anything like what I'd heard. So I was really grateful that I am the type of person that I was just like, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I'm going to try it out for myself. I'm going to do it for myself, but it's completely doable. It's not. And actually, I felt like that the more that I read about it and saw that flow, the more I wanted to know, the more I wanted to try it and do it. And so I felt I got more excited about it. So it wasn't a chore. It was like, okay, this is betterment. This is, let's going to enhance. So yeah.
Thanks. Thanks for sharing. We've made a lot of changes to the program we use. I know you've been through, and so we survey and survey and we survey some more because we really utilize that feedback from providers to adjust. If this activity is not helpful, we drop it off the syllabus and we move on.
So what I actually did was I would just find what day I had the most time and I just sat down and did it. Now at that time, and this was my favorite part, was how flexible I was able to be, especially in those early stages where we're just taking the information in and we're just learning, because you've got several weeks where you're really just learning like everything. And I think that's beneficial that we're not right out of the gate, get all of these videos in right now. We get to learn about it first and take a long time to understand and work with that material. But because there's so much flexibility built in, and you're not going to be spending, I think I talked to a provider that hadn't started yet some time ago, and I think her big concern was she thought it was going to be like 6 hours a week or more. And I was like, oh no, absolutely not. No. It's not that much of a time commitment. I would have probably rioted if if it had been that much. There's no way that I could have managed that. So you've got pretty much that flexibility where you can do whatever works for you as a provider. You can be me and go crazy and just do, just knock it out like really quickly in these big bursts. You can do a little every day. It's definitely a thing that if you don't work on weekends, you can sit down on the weekend and get everything taken care of in a short amount of time. But I think that's the key for providers to understand is like, you're not getting tested on Blackboard. You have a lot of flexibility in your time. I think starting out, I had mentioned like, yeah, weeks 1 through 4, it's going to be a couple weeks before I actually can do them and complete them. And my coach had said, no issue. Like, don't worry. It's fine. We'll work with you on this. She had told me like, I'm not worried. But because I had so much flexibility, it made things like getting my when it came to video submissions later on, made that easy to do because this is when I'm going to try to do it. And I was the queen. Ask Lisa, my coach. I was the queen of, hey, so I was scheduled with this family and they canceled. And then they canceled again, and then they canceled again. So I'm sorry, it won't be in this week, but as soon as I see that family, I'll have that video for you. And I never had a problem with it. Like there was never a time I was reprimanded because like I was late, submitting something or, in my experience, I can only speak for my coach, obviously, but in my experience, I was never shamed like for being a little late on a submission. We get it. Like, Lisa was a provider too. Like she understood, that
exactly.
Sometimes families are sick or sometimes you contact them to schedule and they go, oh yeah, we're in New York. We forgot to tell you we're on vacation.
Thanks for listening. If you have questions, as always, you can direct them to coaches@louisville.edu.